A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." And Jesus answered, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this sycamore, 'Be uprooted and transplanted into the sea,' and it would obey you. If one of you had a servant plowing or herding sheep and came in from the fields, would you say to him, 'Come and sit down at table'? Would you rather not say, 'Prepare my supper, put on your apron and wait on me while I eat and drink'? You can eat and drink afterward." Would the servant be grateful? Would he be grateful to the servant who was just carrying out his orders? It is quite the same way with you who hear me. When you have done all that you have been commanded to do, say, "We are useless servants. We have done no more than our duty." The Gospel of the Lord. It's a great gospel. And as so often happens in the gospel reading for our Sundays, there are just many, many things that could be talked about. And so a choice has to be made. But the thing is, I don't think that we can neglect the concluding lines of this afternoon's gospel, because those 2 or 3 lines are so important. Unfortunately, they're not what I'm going to be focusing on, which is why I want to say just a word about them. Sometimes we can get the idea that when we live the faith and do as the Lord asks, that somehow God owes us because we're so good. Those words of Christ really correct that. Even at our best days of living the faith, we have done no more than what is required of us. And I think that that's important for us to recognize, because that keeps us fairly humble before God. But like I said, that's not what I'm going to talk about. Among other things, the readings for this weekend focus our attention on, this issue of faith. Especially what it means to believe and to have faith when life is difficult, as it so often is. Take the prophet Habakkuk in today's first reading. This prophet is at the end of his rope. The small kingdom of Judah, which is all that at this point remains of Israel, because the northern part has already fallen to the Babylonians, God calls Habakkuk to try and get his people to repent so that Judah doesn't fall as well. But Judah is politically corrupt, and it is on the verge of collapse. I mean, the one place in the whole world where there is worship of the true God, people have started worshiping pagan gods. And in that place, in that country, which God has set his heart on, there is the poor and the innocent and the virtuous being destroyed, while the wicked seem to be prospering. I mean, doesn't that kind of sound like our world today? The prophet Habakkuk can't stand it. I mean, he can't understand how God could allow his country, meaning God's country, how God could allow his country and his people to so degenerate to that point and not intervene, and not change things by his own divine hand. And so here is the prayer that he offers to God in really frustration and anger. He says to God, he says, "O Lord, how long are you going to permit this to go on? I cry out for help, but you don't seem to listen. I beg you to intervene, and you don't act. Why do you let me see ruin? Why must I look at misery? Destruction and violence are everywhere. The world is falling apart." Pretty strong words. These words were first spoken by Habakkuk 2,600 years ago. I mean, think about that. 2,600 years ago is when he preached this message. And the amazing thing is that his words are as timely for us who live now as they were for the people of his day. I mean, Habakkuk, this prophet, couldn't possibly have imagined the destruction and the violence and the misery on such a massive scale that are a part of our lives. Think about 9/11 and look at that field and be overwhelmed by the 3,000 flags. I mean, that day, so many died. And, we have almost come just to accept it. It's the new normal. Yeah, there is terrorism. A lot of people die. This is the world in which our children are going to live. And if we accept it, then our children are in real trouble. Think of the 3,000 that died. Think of all of the others since 9/11 in just about every part of the world where the innocent have been killed and others maimed, and the sorrow and the anguish and the grief of their families. Look, and it doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. We're being told that we are supposed to plan right now to live with that for an awfully long time. And when you think about that, it does seem like our world is on the verge of ending. How easy it is for us to pray right along with the prophet Habakkuk and his prayer today. In the first reading, as we think about our lives, we can cry out to God with those same words, "Oh Lord, how much longer are you going to permit this to go on?" We cry out for help, but you don't seem to listen. We beg you to intervene, but you don't change anything. How many of us in our own hearts have said to God in our private moments of prayer, "Please, help us in the face of this terrible scourge, help us." Let's face it. When we look at what is going on in our world, it can be very hard to believe in an all-good and all-knowing and all-loving and all-powerful God. In our weak moments, in our moments of doubt, and we all have them, we think something like this. We think, if there is a God, if He really exists, then where is He in all of this? I mean, where was He when people were jumping out of those towers, committing suicide rather than risking being burned to death? Oh God, where were you when that was happening? Those questions are down there in our hearts. Then we have to ask, oh God, what does it mean for us, your people, to believe in you when there is such darkness around us? What does it mean for us to believe in you when you don't seem to be around? That's the question. Let me try and answer that question with a story. There's a